What I want to do today is I want to answer the question, where the heck did you get your eating habits from? Where did they come from? Where were they created? When did you develop them? Right? And this is so important because, you can't begin to change something unless first you know where the heck it's coming from. That's just the way life is, right? You can't lose weight if you don't first know how many pounds you're overweight or where you want to go, right? You need to know beginning and you need to know an end, okay? So, food is a really funny thing. I don't know about you ladies, but I pride myself on really being able to self-analyze myself and check my ego all the time. Like, I really, really pride myself on being able to check my ego. Like, if someone says I'm doing something wrong, I won't get defensive. I'll sit there, I'll listen, I'll analyze, and then I'll correct if I need to, right? I really pride myself on not being reactive. And the only place that I find it difficult to check my ego is what? Guess. It's when it comes to food, right? We are all, like, food is so personal. It is so personal. The way you eat, the timing you eat, what dishes you use to eat, if you want your food touching or not, how hot you eat it, how cold, like, everything is so personal. And if someone mentions something about my food, I immediately get defensive. It's just so personal. And that's why I want to make this call, because I really want to break down what the hell is going on and the psychology behind why we do what we do in regards to our eating behaviors. Like, it's an entire world, right? And so the very, very first place you develop your eating habits is with your parents, right? That's where we're exposed. As perfect as parents try to be, they're not, right? Does anybody have perfect parents? No. Is anybody a perfect parent? No, right? We try our best. We really, really do. And they try their best. But unfortunately, there's always flaws that slip out and they pass on, right? From generation to generation. That's just the way that it is. And one of those flaws is eating habits, right? So right now, I want you to go back to your childhood. Go back to your earliest memory of food. And I want you to ask yourself, what was the conversation? What were the actions that your parents took around food? How did you get exposed to food? Okay. Did your parents only feed you what you liked, and as a result, you developed being a picky eater? Did your parents, say you can't leave the table till you finish everything on your plate? And then you developed, with some binge eating habits, or like because you were stuffing yourself, right? Did your parents say, did they say, you look fat, stop snacking, or maybe you should lose a few? Like, how did they talk about food around you? Did they say, go to bed without dinner? So now you think of food in some way as a reward or punishment, right? So this is the very, very beginning of where those habits and the thought process started to form. So take a second in the comments, drop one of the habits that you can contribute to your parents. So one of the eating habits that you have right now that your parents gave to you. So what do you think that is? So we got eating before bed. That's definitely one. Maybe eating in front of a TV is one. Maybe, eating standing up or in a car is one. Yep, forcing food, binge eating. Maybe even one of your parents had disordered eating and you adapted that. It's crazy. So freaking crazy, right? Our parents try so hard not to fuck us up. And in the process of not fucking us up, they fuck us up. It's crazy. Not their fault. It's just the way of life. It's a circle of life. And so this is where we first get these habits, okay? Now, I remember growing up, I think when I was really, really young, I think 8 and younger, my mom was very, very, very overweight. She was probably like 250 pounds, if I remember correctly. And, the funny thing is, I remember being that young, and I remember not thinking there was anything wrong with her. I never thought of her as the fat mom. I never thought she was like, ew, that's my mom. Like, it never occurred to me. She's just my beautiful mom, and I loved her. But, obviously she didn't love her body, so she decided to lose weight, right? And so at a young age, I was exposed to her losing weight and the process she took, right? So she did a lot of excess exercise. She restricted her calories a lot. She lost the weight, and she's very, very healthy now. But at the time, she didn't lose the weight very healthy. And so when I was young, that's what I was exposed to, right? I'd always see her eating Melba toast and cheese. Melba toast and a slice of those Kraft Singles slices on it. That's what I saw her eating all the time. So as I grew up, like, how gross does that sound? Does that sound gross? You guys remember Melba toast? So dry and crunchy and gross. But as I grew up and as I started to put on a little bit of weight, and I went into high school and noticed, hey, there's some skinnier girls than me. Maybe I should get skinny. I thought, Melba toast and cheese, right? That's just where your mind goes. I thought that's all I knew. She lost all this weight. That was what I was exposed to. So I thought, that's how you lose weight. And so my eating habits revolving weight loss came from my mom losing weight. That's where I learned it first. And I want you to take a second. Who exposed you to weight loss first? Who exposed you in your life, family, friends? Who brought it up first, and who did you watch first? Where did you get your first sense of, oh, this is a thing, and oh, maybe this is how you do it? Usually it's the moms. Yeah, it's the moms. Moms, aunts, grandmas. Yeah, DJ Tanner on Full House. That's funny. Yeah, media, shows, all that stuff. So they kind of teach you that. And then, I went my whole life until I actually actively decided to go to school and learn. I went my whole life thinking that that was just how you do it, right? And everything I tried to lose weight or change my body as I grew up was related to like extremely restricting your calories, because that's the only thing I knew. And so much so that by I think I was like 18 or so, I was like, this cannot be the way to do it. I was like, this cannot be the way to lose weight. Like, this is torture. I can't live like this. There's people who are healthier and look great. Like, what's the difference? So the only reason that I actually ended up in the health field, the health and fitness field, was because I personally wanted to teach myself more. Like, I was like, I'm unhealthy. I need to know more. So I'm going to go pay for a diploma and figure it out. I ended up falling in love with it, and now there's Fit Queen, so it's funny how destiny works. But it all happened because of an eating habit, led me on this path, which is crazy, absolutely mind-blowing. So the very first place you learn your eating habits from are your parents, okay? You always pull from that early stages. Now, the second place that you learn your eating habits, and that really, really stick with you and are a defining moment in how you eat now today, is when you finally go out on your own. So when you have to shop for yourself, buy the groceries yourself, make the food yourself, whatever that is. Maybe it's while you're still at home that happens. Maybe it's when you first move out, when you go to college, when you get married, whatever that time is, okay? So now taking it back, probably late teens, early 20s, when was the first time you had full food responsibility? When was that? Put it in the comments. Could be when you moved out for college, maybe you just wanted to move out of the house. Yeah, university. Yeah, late teens, about that. So now you're in a whole new world, right? So you take a little bit of what you learned from your parents, and now you're kind of thrown into the wild and you start developing your own, right? So take a second and think of the circumstances when you moved out. Were you low on money, so you lived off of KD and grilled cheese, right? Were you really, really busy and working night shifts, so you developed eating late at night? So what were these habits you developed as a result of being out on your own? What were those? Put them in the comments. So that first time you were out on your own, you had full food responsibility, you had to make it, you had to cook it. Maybe you didn't even know how to cook it, so you just ordered it out all the time. What's the habit you developed from being out on your own for the first time? There it is. Worked at McDonald's. There you go. So you're eating at McDonald's all the time. Skipping breakfast. Yep, that's one that's very, very common. What else? Made meals from home. Yeah, meat and potatoes. Yeah, exactly. So you took the old habits of like Sunday dinners are for families with meat and potatoes, right? That was my family. Sit down for Sunday, meat and potatoes, right? And you take that with you and you try to do it. So that's a good example. Tim Hortons a lot, absolutely. Ramen for sure, like just easy stuff, right? You're on your own, you don't know what to do. So these are the habits you develop. So now, where you are now, right now in life with your eating habits, whether you've corrected them a little bit, a lot, or not at all yet, they still contain aspects from those two big milestones in your life, from your parents and from the first time you had full food responsibility, okay? The first time I had full food responsibility, it was actually before I moved out. My mom was always a babysitter. She always babysat at our house. And then she decided to go back to work. And then I officially had no parents in the house until like 7, 8 at night. So when I was like 12 or 13 years old, I was responsible for making dinner, right? I enjoyed it. I wanted to do it. So what I did was I sat all day and I watched the Food Network. Does anybody else love the Food Network? I would watch the Food Network all day, like Mario Batali, like all these crazy, Michael Smith, like all these chefs. I just watch it and then I try to create what they created. And so my first experience and exposure to food responsibility and cooking and learning this and feeding myself, being independent and feeding myself, was a good experience. It actually taught me how to cook. So I cooked for my sister. I cooked for my younger sister, and I cooked for my parents, and they had dinner ready when they got home. But if you flip that and look at it from my sister's point of view, she didn't have to take on any food responsibility. In fact, she's still at home right now. So she is not the greatest cook, right? She doesn't really know how to buy groceries, you know, if things last long in the fridge. Like that hindered her. Do you see how this is so personal from person to person? So my experience was good. Because of my experience, it didn't help her. And so now her food habits are defined by that moment. So her first food freedom was not really much. She went to university, but she was still living at home. So now she's gotten really good at making cheesy scrambled eggs and KD, right? So it's really dependent on your situation. And then the third and final milestone that has contributed to who you are and how you eat today is your first relationship, your first serious relationship. If you haven't had one, or you can go to a best friend will also do that, but your first serious relationship. So think back to your first serious relationship, when you finally kind of fell head over heels, you finally felt comfortable with somebody. Remember what happens when you get comfortable with someone? How much weight did you gain? Come on, how much? Everybody did. Minimum 5 pounds, minimum 5 pounds. When you get comfortable with someone, what do? You let your guard down, you eat a little bit more, right? You eat a little bit more or a lot of it more, because, you know, you don't have to impress anybody anymore, right? You can stop going to the gym. You can, you know, order the burger at the restaurant instead of ordering the salad to look good, right? And so that's the second thing. So when you got into your first serious relationship, how much weight did you gain? And what habits did you develop as a couple? What habits did you have? Friday night pizza nights, Saturday night bar nights, right? Chinese food Wednesday nights, right? When Ryan and I first started dating, we were in college. So, you know, college students' diet's not the greatest. Plus, we got really, really comfortable really fast with each other. And guess what our favorite pastime was? Checking out the newest restaurant and seeing what we liked. And then when we found a restaurant we went there all the time. And I would always order the same thing because I'm boring like that. And Ryan would order something different every time. He's crazy like that. But that was our favorite pastime. And so now here we are, ladies, with the 3 big milestones in your life that have built how you eat today. That's it. Those 3 huge times in your life has created all the great habits you have and all those horrible habits you're still trying to overcome. The binging, the snacking, the late night eating, the not eating, the forgetting to eat, all of it was from those 3 main points, which is crazy. You can trace them all back to those 3 points, okay? So now what the heck do we do with this information? Now that we know this, what do we do, right? So first and foremost, I want you to think about what are those habits. So does anybody have a weird habit or like a habit personal to you when it comes to food, right? Does anybody not like their food touching? Does anybody hate having cold food? Like, what are your weird habits? We all got them. Think for a second, put them in the comments. My weird habit, I don't know where this came from. I hate eating with big utensils. I will use like baby utensils to eat. I don't know why. Don't ask. I'm still unpacking that one psychologically. I just use like I love little forks and little spoons. I don't know why. I hate big stuff. So some of you don't like food touching. Some of you are the opposite of me and like the big utensils. Lauren likes the small utensils. That's funny. Food has to be super hot. Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. And if someone messes with your food, you get pissed. Right? You ever think of food all day long in the fridge waiting for you, and then you get home and someone ate it, and you're pissed. You're so pissed. You were looking forward to it all day. It's because we have such an attachment to food. And so these habits, track them back. They're coming from 3 places. So either your parents taught them to you, okay? You taught them to yourself when you had full responsibility, or you learned them from the closest person you had during that relationship. That's where they came from, okay? So now all of these circumstances created these habits, right? The circumstances equals the creation. But do circumstances change? All the time, right? Can you rely on circumstances to be consistent? No, right? So what you have to realize is that even though these habits are decades in the making, and they stem psychologically from just three main parts, and they're very, very deep in us, they were created. That doesn't mean they can't be uncreated. They were learned, they can be unlearned. You can replace them with new habits by having new big milestones in your life. And one of those would be getting your partner on board with your healthy eating. Does anybody else have a husband, a boyfriend, or a best friend, or a mom that's been really supportive this whole process? Maybe that even helps meal prep, does all that. So that is a huge milestone. By having somebody support you, you're building new healthy habits as if you were in that first relationship again. So now you're taking those milestone moments and replacing them with more positive ones. Is this making sense? It's very cool when you think about it. Very cool. And of course, they've been ingrained in you for so long. It's going to take time, but you have to start realizing that they're there. And what are you going to do to replace that milestones, right? So your parents said all these crazy things like, children in Africa can't eat, so you got to eat all your food. Does anybody get that one? I got that one all the time. And then I was a mouthy kid. So I'm like, well, then mail it to the kids in Africa. I don't want it. Like, it's just weird. This is a weird conversation. I'm like, I'm trying to eat dinner. Why are we talking about African kids? It's just weird. But it's like, okay, my parents instilled these new habits. Where can I facilitate this type of situation in my life now? Right? Can you teach your parents new habits? Can you become the parent? Right? So you can't, your parents, for the most part, they're grown, right? Especially if they're older, they're probably set in their ways. It's probably too much of a headache to change them. You just love them and accept them for who they are, right? So now you take on, how can I be the parent, in quotations, in this life now? What can I do? Who can you guide? How can you guide yourself in a way that a parent would guide you? And that's how you recreate new habits based on that first exposure, based on the parents in the beginning. And then you on your own, right? So now you starting this Fit Queen journey, starting your health journey, wherever you are, that's a new responsibility. That's new food responsibility, right? And when you started the new Fit Queen nutrition side of things, is it not like completely starting fresh? Is it not like how you felt when you first moved out and were first responsible for your own cooking? And now you might even have more than one person to care for, right? It's a huge new step to start something like this. So you've already started in that sense, replacing new habits, right? But it is so important that you just first and foremost realize that they're there. Like some of you can remember crazy habits you have right now, and some of you can't remember them. There's still some that you need to take a second and unpack. They're there, right? We all have crazy habits. Is anybody else remembering some as we talk through this? Go ahead and keep writing them down. We got some crazy, weird habits that are just that, habits. Does anybody sometimes feel like overwhelmed or like they're drowning in their habits? Like they're just, it's been around so long, you can't possibly fathom how this will ever change. Like sometimes we live in that moment for a couple seconds. You guys are Fit Queens. You know better, right? You know better. You know that emotions are temporary and situations and circumstances are temporary. But sometimes we live in that moment just for a second where we think, what's the point? Is this going to work, right? But realizing that habits are just habits. It's not the be all end all. It is just a habit that you learned and that you can unlearn and that you can replace. But are you noticing that they're there? Are you noticing where that habit came from in the first place? Because if you're not, how are you going to replace it and simulate one of those three places again? How can you simulate those big three milestones in your new life, in your new upgraded Fit Queen life? So how can you simulate it? So I want you to take a second, okay, and think, okay, so what's your biggest, worst habit right now when it comes to food? What is the worst thing that you wish you could change? And if you could snap your fingers, you wish it would go away. What is that? Write it in the comments. Snacking, binging, being hyper-focused on food, forgetting to eat. So we got some late night snacking, eating too much, overindulging, eating the bad stuff. So for the most part, it's overindulging. And I'm going to take a guess and say that came from your parents. Everybody who said the binging, it was probably from parents who said, eat everything on your plate. Am I right? Yeah, right? Eat everything on your plate. They don't even know what they're doing to us at the time. And we probably, for any mothers, do you say it? Do you catch yourself saying it? Sometimes you'll say it. But it's right. You have to recreate that. It's okay if you're full. You have to stop eating, right? But if you were never taught that or taught that directly, you carry that over into overindulging now, binging now, right? Late night snacking, eating an entire tub of Ben & Jerry's instead of just a couple bites, right? We just can't stop. Or we tell ourselves we can't stop. There's a difference. For the longest time in my life, I probably from age 13 to 19, I legitimately thought I had eating disorders. I thought I suffered from anorexia, bulimia, and binge eating disorder. I legitimately struggled so much internally with how much I hated the way that I ate, and I just felt so out of control. I didn't know how the hell to get control of it. I thought I was stuck with this. I thought I was going to have to see a doctor, and I would struggle forever. And it wasn't until I just realized, and one day I went to, I did a therapy session. I went for my first therapy session because I was like, okay, I need to talk to somebody and just say this stuff out loud to see if it makes sense. And I was in this therapy room and I was talking to a therapist, and I'm like talking it through and trying to figure it out. And she's like, okay, every emotion you're feeling is connected to a thought. Every emotion you feel. So you ever start talking and you're talking about something sensitive and you start tearing up? Has that ever happened? Then you start talking and then you start crying, right? And you're like, why the hell am I crying? Every time you experience an emotion, it's attached to a thought. So when you start crying, you're thinking of something. You're thinking immediately of something. What is that thought? And when you do that, and when you break it down, your emotions like that, you can understand the emotion and you can get rid of it much faster, right? Same with anxiety, right? If you ever feel anxious, anxiety is attached to a thought. What is that thought? Is it, oh my God, I'm going to fail that test? Well, hold on. Did I not spend weeks studying? Did I not test myself? Am I not prepared? So why am I anxious? And you can kind of level yourself out like that. When I was in this therapy session, she said, every thought or every emotion is attached to one thought. If you can break down what that one thought is, every time you feel an intense emotion, you can instantly regain control. Because now you know where what is causing that thought. What is causing that emotion to come out? If you at least know what it is, you can begin to fix it. Maybe not immediately, but you at least know where it is. Instead of feeling anxious. You ever lay down at night and you feel anxious and you don't know why? Or you ever feel like you lay down and you're like, am I forgetting something? Do you guys ever feel that before? Like, oh, am I forgetting something? Right? And if you can just take a second and think, what is the thought? What is the thought attached to this emotion? Then it's game over. And so the therapist was walking me through this theory about a thought being attached to emotion. And as we were doing it, she told me to plot, and I was concerned about my binging. I was really, really overindulging like crazy. So much so that I was making myself throw up because I was just so full and there was food up to here. It was absolutely horrible for my body. And I was talking her through it and I was freaking out. I'm like, this binge eating habit, this disorder, this pattern. And she's like, well, hold on. Pull out a calendar. And I want you to mark down how many times you binged in the last month. And I put the X's on where I binged. And then she said, go back to last month. Mark down where you binged. And it was less. And then go back to last month. And it was less. And so all of a sudden, she pulled me out of my head and she was like, it's not a pattern. Look month to month. There's no pattern you can find. So it's not a behavior. It's just a reaction that you've been conditioned to follow. Because you couldn't take a second, feel what thought was behind that emotion. So you just acted in a way that made that emotion go away. And food, for me, made that emotion go away. instead of thinking of the thought and fixing the thought and getting rid of the emotion completely. I pushed the emotion down temporarily and replaced it with a different one that food gave me. Isn't that crazy? Isn't that crazy? So what I really want you guys to take away from this is, you know, we all have these habits. And if I were to sit down with you guys for a month straight and talk to you every day for a month, we still wouldn't cover all the habits that you have. There's a crazy amount. But the ones that you know you don't like, the ones that are on your mind right now that you're thinking of, the ones that are probably the reason you gained weight in the first place, those are the ones we have to tackle. There's tons more that are hindering you. But let's focus on the big ones. They're the biggest hole in the bucket right now. Take them, find out where they were created, which one of the big 3 events caused them, and then how can you recreate one of those big events now so you can replace this habit. And then in the moment, dealing with this habit, remember, what is your thought behind the emotion that's leading to this habit? Why are you eating the entire pint of ice cream? What's the thought you're having that's leading to that? What's the thought that you're having, right? Too often we wait until after the fact that we perform the habit, and we miss the opportunity to feel that raw thought. But that's when it's most important, and that's when it can do the most good. If you identify that raw thought, not after the fact, because after the fact, you guys are getting really good at analyzing yourselves, right? You're getting really good at saying, oh, I messed up. This is what I did. This is what I'm going to do better. Fit Queens are pros at that, right? But now you have to become better and practice doing it in the moment. And that's something I'm still mastering. That's something that's very, very difficult, right? We're all big on strengthening your follow-through muscle. And it's easy to strengthen your follow-through muscle out of the moment. That's great. Do it. It's going to work. It's going to move you forward. But what's going to skyrocket you and push you and elevate you faster is if you can catch yourself in the moment. Not every time. Try it once a week, twice a week. When are you the most emotional? Do you have a big project due every Friday? Do you have a big family dinner every Saturday that you're anxious for? Do you have a meeting with your in-laws Sundays that you don't like? Like, what are these triggers for you, and what's the thought behind them? It's just a thought. It's not an emotion. It's just a thought that's leading to the emotion. The emotion is not in control. The thought that you've created in your mind is the thing that has all the power. So if you can just reword the thought, game over. The output is completely different. It's the difference between freaking out over writing a test or going into it confident. How many people have gone into writing a test, whenever the last time you wrote a test was? Were you ever confident? Or were you nervous as the teacher handed out the test? Did your heart rate speed up a little bit? Right? Because there's a thought behind it. But it's very easy to fix that emotion once you know the thought. It's reverse engineering. So ladies, I want you to take a look at your habits. I want you to reverse engineer them. And I want you to just think, what's the thought behind your habits? Has anybody done something today that they're not proud of? Did anybody fall off, messed up, screwed up? If you did, you don't have to tell me. But you have to say, how did you feel after? Like shit, probably, and guilty, right? We've all felt that before, guilty when we fall off. Why do we feel guilty? Why do we have that pit in our stomach that doesn't go away? It's because you think you've thrown everything away, right? You think you've thrown all your progress away. You think you're never going to reach your goal. You think you let yourself down. But if you say, hold on, let me mark on the calendar how many times I actually messed up. Oh, there's no pattern there. This is a speed bump, not a mountain. It becomes way easier to face the day, way easier to control your emotions, and way easier to reprogram your habits. And that's the goal here. We're creating a brand new routine, a brand new lifestyle, right? Your lifestyle created the body you had. You didn't like the body you had, so if you want to change the body, you have to change your lifestyle, right? And that's what we're doing. Easier said than done, but this is one of the steps that you can do today to do that. So if you had a negative emotion today, everybody had one, right? Everybody had one negative emotion today, whether it was a big one or a small one. Take that emotion. What was the thought? The one thought behind it. And a key to know if you found that thought, it usually stirs up the same emotion immediately. So find that emotion, Think about the thought, and then talk yourself through the thought. And life becomes a lot less stressful, ladies. Because weight loss and health and fitness, it's forever. Shouldn't be torture. You shouldn't have to drag your feet. It should be fun. So you have to be the master of your own mind, the master of your own thoughts, and the master of your own emotions. And that's what today's call is about. Okay, ladies? So quickly, put in the comments, what is your biggest takeaway from today? What are we going to take from today and use going forward? Lots of stuff. To really appreciate this one, you're going to have to really apply it to your life. So you're probably going to have to go back and break down your life a little bit. So Cheryl says, I control my habits. Exactly. It's literally you're one thought away from switching like a train when there's forks in the road. You can flip that switch and the train goes the other way. Your habit can go the other way. One thought away. That if I don't believe I can change the habit, you can. Yes, you're not a slave. Habits are not a prison. It's really, really not. It's just something you've practiced so much. You've become good at practicing bad habits. And you've also become very good at convincing yourself that you have to continue practicing bad habits. You've become really good at convincing yourself good habits are hard. Right? And what you're doing right now, is it really that hard? No. Maybe challenging sometimes, maybe when holidays come up, maybe when friends come over, but it's not hard. But for so many years, for X amount of time, you've convinced yourself that the bad habits are easier to keep doing than replacing the good habits. And that's not true. You just haven't practiced the good habits enough. And that's some real knowledge right there. Think about why I do what I do and take control. Exactly. I need to realize sometimes that I'm not eating because I'm hungry. It's to distract myself from emotion I don't want to deal with. Yes, that is what I'm talking about. It's a distraction. Food is the biggest distraction of all. How much time do you think about what you're going to make, how you're going to make it, when you're going to eat it, how good is it going to taste? I can't wait for my free meal. How many minutes and hours is it on your brain in a day? Why? Because we've trained ourselves to use it as a distraction. We've trained ourselves, if it's in our mind all day, we don't have room to think of anything else. We don't have room to think of, oh my God, I got in a fight with my husband. Oh my God, I have the rent due. Oh my God, like so much shit. We don't have room. So we fill it with food because food is easy and food always equals happiness, temporary happiness. So that's huge. Every second of the day, pretty much, it's true. Every second of the day, food's on the brain. Food's on the brain. Like I said, I'm a procrastinator. I am a procrastinator. And that's the truth. We're all procrastinators. We eat because we don't want to do something else. Either a task, either dealing with an emotion, anything. So thank you, ladies. That was a big one today. Really take it in, see how you can apply it, and break down every thought attached to those extreme emotions. It really does help.